make a fantasy happen, something that they've always seen in their mind's eye. I've always wanted to have two beautiful women curled up on either side of me in bed and get to just have that mental picture to hold on to forever. And I get to help illustrate their mental image and bring it to life in the most beautiful way possible.
The sun is coming up, are you ready to go? We can take a ride, we can take it slow, yo.
Welcome back to the Road to Self-Love. It's your boy Paul Fishman, self-love coach and you do you activist. So honored, so excited that you are here today with me and my guest, Alice Little. Alice traveled all the way from Reno just to see me, just to be on the show.
It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
It's not wrong. And I'm so excited. So Alice, the thing about this show is that I think it's so important to give my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves as they want to be known, because that to me is what self-love is all about. So hit it.
Well, my name is Alice Little. I am a legal sex worker, sex educator, and intimacy expert.
Ooh, intimacy expert. I am all about that, because I think that it's really special to be intimate with yourself about your needs and wants and all that goodness. So, can you tell me a little bit more about like how you got into the work that you're doing? Because it's not every day that you meet a legal sex worker.
It's true. So legal sex work only exists in one of the 50 states, Nevada. At the time, I was living in the Midwest and working as a sex educator. I was traveling around the country, giving seminars to men, women, couples, thruples, and more sums. And through there, I came across a fellow educator that was working at one of the ranches. They shared a little bit about their experience, and I was pretty much head over heels intrigued. Decided to go on out, give it a try, you know, just for a couple weeks, see if it would be a good fit. And then 4 years later, I am still there, and it very much so has become my focus and passion.
That's so cool. What I like about your journey is that it sounds to me like you just allowed yourself to try things and experience it. And then from there, you just kind of you just let your life kind of go the way that you wanted it to go.
Yeah, it's not something I had ever expected to do. I didn't set out with this mission of, oh, I'm gonna be the most successful sex worker in the country. Oh, that's what I'm gonna be known for. I mostly allowed my curiosity to kind of drive my path and my passions. Anytime I discovered something that I didn't know anything about, I started to learn about it and explore it, and that eventually led me to getting to connect with just some of the most interesting people on the planet from all walks of life. And it's given me a lot of interesting perspectives on how people relate to themselves intimately, sexually, how they talk to themselves as opposed to how they talk to others.
We were chatting before this, and I really appreciate this about you, because you want to be educated, and you do your best to educate yourself and learn about everyone's needs, and you have this beautiful way of expressing it that I just find like really, really empowering and exciting to witness. So I'm really, really grateful that you are out here doing the work and sharing with others what it's like, because, you know, when I think of a sex worker, you know, I just think of what, like Pretty Woman, or anything that the media has really painted a picture as to what it is. So would you be willing to kind of share some misconceptions about sex workers, and also like why sex work is so important?
Yes. So sex work is nothing new. Sex work is something that has existed in every single society since the dawn of time. When we go back and even look at the very first set of legal code, Hammurabi's code, there's actually lines in there that talk about not stigmatizing sex workers. So the misconceptions around sex work are actually newer than sex work itself. a lot of people perceive sex workers as being dirty, slutty. They just must really want attention and sex, and they must all be nymphos. They must all have horrible lives which force them down this path. No one would consensually choose to be with so many different people. And the reality is that sex workers oftentimes end up being healers for society. They offer connection to those who struggle to find it in their day-to-day, whether it be through circumstance, such as folks that are born with genetic conditions that cause disabilities, or through life itself, folks that have incredibly busy lives that don't enable them to have long-term committed relationships. Like, society has long embraced the idea that we need mental health professionals to assist us through anything that we're struggling with mentally or emotionally. And I've always felt that sex workers represent another side of healing, which is the intimate side. We need that level of connection and that level of understanding. It's really necessary and important.
Yes. It is very necessary and important. And when I came in contact with you, I heard you on another podcast, and we just kind of connected on Instagram, and I feel like we became like fast friends. And
yes.
And I because you were like, Paul, we're doing the same thing. We're empowering people to love themselves unconditionally for who they are and how they want to show up in the world. And that's what I really appreciate about you, is that you've, for me, humanized sex work and really just shown that you're just a person connecting with others, and that's it. So where do you think that the fear behind all of what you do comes from?
Unfortunately, a large part of the origin of stigmatizing sex and sex work comes from the same place that the stigmatization of any quote-unquote non-standard relationships come from. And unfortunately, it's from a place of religion. There's a lot of religious morality that people experience and express through a series of different ways, and the most toxic way that people express that is through the negative, harsh judgment of others, to the point where that becomes the accepted standard, in which even Hollywood casts a very negative, inaccurate portrayal of who sex workers are, what they do, how they relate to people. And even when they think they're doing so in a very enlightened capacity, like with the J-Lo movie, Hustlers, there's still certain inaccuracies in there that just don't ring true to life.
Why do you think that is?
An unwillingness to have communication between themselves and somebody that they view as other. There's a fear of talking to a sex worker. What does it mean about me if I'm willing to talk to a person like that? And it simply means that you have an open mind and a willingness to learn, and that's not a bad thing.
I don't think so either. I probably think that hearing this conversation for a lot of people is the first time that they've heard from a sex worker. So what would you say to a person who's coming in contact with a sex worker for the first time?
Be willing to listen and reconsider your initial perspectives. Society has unfortunately filled us with lots of negative imagery when it comes to how we perceive sex workers. And you've got to be willing to take that, bundle it up, tie a string around it, and then toss it directly in the trash, because that information is based off of stereotypes rather than reality. And I think so much of that is caused by a society that wants quick judgment. We're supposed to make instant perceptions of people and valuations of people without ever actually unpacking who that person is, what they do, what they represent, and instead, sex worker equals bad, must label and put into this one specific category. And there has to be a willingness to change that perspective first and foremost before any sort of conversation can really take place.
That really resonates with me. And I think that within that statement can really pinpoint that for anyone, whether, who's different, and I think that I come across this with a lot of my clients, this fear of the unknown, right? This fear that, like, you don't I don't know who you are or what you do, so I'm going to put you in a box so as I can then define myself related to that box that I put you in, right? So like putting Alice in a box, oh, Alice is bad, she does this, I'm good because I'm not like Alice, right? Which I just think isn't very fair at all.
No, and it's unfortunate because how we view ourselves shouldn't be based off of the negative perception of others. Instead, it should be based off of our own values and the things that we represent. And a lot of the time I find that people choose to view the world through a lens of hate because they were never taught how to view the world through a lens of love in the first place. And you have to completely be willing to change that narrative. And that's a real struggle for people because it leads to a questioning of not just one thing, but so many different aspects of themselves, their lives, and how they've done things up until this point. And nobody wants to feel foolish and be like, oh no, I made a mistake. But sometimes that's the very first step towards progress, is recognizing, hey, I can still learn something here and maybe there is a better way.
Oh, like my mind is just blown. Like the way that you so eloquently put that, like really, really powerful stuff. How would you, like if someone's hearing this and they're like, ooh, I think of things always through this lens of hate, what would you recommend, like some first steps into flipping that narrative?
I'd say identifying the key words that you tend to repeat over and over again. I would never do this. I would never do this or that. Or for some people it's, wow, that must mean blank. Everyone tends to have phrases that are unique to them that they come back to time and time again. Oh, I would never be willing to. I cannot believe that they did this. And when you identify those trends in how you're judging others, you can then start to change that and instead say, I might be willing to consider doing that if I learned more about it. Or, hey, I don't know enough about that to make a judgment on it. Maybe I need to learn more about it first. And that, I think, is really the true essence of changing the narrative, is having a certain level of self-awareness and recognizing those patterns that we fall back into time and time and time again. And if you can start to stop yourself and in that moment say, oh no, I said that thing and that's not actually benefiting me or anyone around me, let me rephrase that, let me reframe it, you then create a space in which genuine conversation and understanding can happen.
Yes. Ooh. Okay, I'm just like letting that settle in for a little bit. You know, we were talking earlier about like how you can build your self-love by examining how others love themselves and kind of like putting yourself in their shoes. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Oh, for sure. So one of the biggest difficulties for people is to envision life as someone else, what their experiences must be, what has led them down the path that they lead, and how can we find beauty and love and appreciation for that person in their journey. The only time in which we do so is through celebrity. Let's say like Malala Yousafzai. People have such a deep appreciation for her story, the fact that she was literally shot in the head for wanting to defend her own education. Well, have you ever taken the time to think about what that experience must have been like in that moment? That she could have very easily, and probably even easier than becoming an activist, chose to instead simply accept the fact that, oh, I'm in a society that's never going to allow women to grow and thrive. But she chose, instead of doing the difficult thing, or instead of doing the easy thing, she chose to do the difficult thing. Why? If you start to think about it, what gave her that courage? What lit her fire? What fed her ambition? And I think that's what makes her such a beautiful and human person that so many relate to. Not just because she had this tragic life story, but the fact that she had the fire within her to overcome that. That's beautiful. And then apply that same principle to your own life. What lights my fire? What experiences encourage me to challenge what societal's perception is? How do I motivate myself? How can I then translate that to a way that it applies to me, understand that, and then love and appreciate it and foster that and kindle it.
I mean, I need an associate coach. You are hired. You are hired.
Got you, fam.
That was just so eloquently put, and I think this really just is furthering the conversation around putting people in boxes and how it just doesn't do any good, and also just like walking a mile in someone else's shoes, or just even like a step, you never know what someone else is going through. And like, you know, that classic cliche saying, don't judge a book by its cover. It's I think you just nailed that on the head.
And when it comes to how do we choose to then judge others, how do we choose to perceive others, and much in the same way you're like, I want my guests to introduce themselves, let people self-inform you of who they are, how they identify, what their personal value system is, rather than trying to grasp at straws and say, oh, I think that this person must be this way because of these 3 unrelated things. It's like, you don't know someone from their Instagram. Not really, anyway. You don't have that depth of understanding unless they so choose to put it out there, lay it bare, and essentially share their soul in a deeply personal way. And it's rare, because most people are very hesitant to do so.
Yep, and in this day and age, it's so easy to share whatever version of ourselves we want to share, regardless of if it's true or if we just think it's going to get the likes and the engagement. And I'm really inspired by you right now. Really inspired. So I would love to play our first road trip game of the day, if you're willing.
I am.
Okay,
let's do this.
Awesome. So I would like to play the association game with you. Have you ever played this before?
I'm not sure if I have.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm going to say a word, and you are going to say the first thing that pops into your head that's associated with from hearing the word that I said. And then I'm going to say the word that pops into my head from what you said. And we're just gonna go back and forth and back and forth. Now, there's no like right or wrong way. There's no winner or loser. It's just like, how much fun can we have with this?
I'm so game.
Okay, awesome. But I'm feeling like letting you start. So you just choose a word.
Let's start with passion.
Ooh, purpose.
That's a good one. Purpose. First thing that comes to mind with purpose.
There's gotta be something in there, Alice.
Oh, there definitely is. I'm such a nerd. I'm like, purpose, place and things. Oh, Jesus. Let's go with place.
San Diego.
Ooh, adventure.
Exhilarating.
Friendship.
Bracelet.
Necklace.
Diamonds.
Sparkle.
Ooh. Glitter.
Drag queens.
Yes. Miss Self-Love.
The Self-Love Roadshow.
Yeah. Podcast.
Connection.
Human.
Kind.
That's a great place to stop. Oh, that was so beautiful. I love playing that game because it just like, it really drops me in real quick with where my guests are. So I mean, you're at the top, Alice. You're at the top. So, you know, we haven't talked much about your actual life when it comes to the day-to-day, because I don't necessarily think that like it's really important to know because I'm more focused on like who you are as an individual. But I would love for you to just kind of like demystify and debunk any of like the ideas of what a sex worker is, and just maybe take us through the day in the life.
Yes! So I usually wake up pretty bright and early because I am a dog mom. So I have 3 needy little boys at home. So I wake up and the first thing I do is take them out for a walk if the weather is nice. I'll come home, make myself some breakfast and a giant pot of coffee, and I tend to be a big fan of multitasking. So I tend to take my breakfast over to my computer and start to just look through social media, see what kinds of messages, themes people are talking about. And I like to start by just getting in touch with my people first and foremost before taking care of any of the business stuff or emails. I want to know how people are communicating, what their day is like. Is there anything major that has happened that's affecting people in the here and now? And after that, I'll start diving into some of my emails. I'm a big fan of personal communication, so I let that take as long as it needs to. I don't like set a timer and go, okay, I need to get this all done within a certain time frame. No, I don't like that kind of pressuresome feel to things. So after I go through my emails, I'll usually get ready for the day, hop through the shower, make more coffee, and I usually have just one appointment each day. I like to be able to give myself completely and totally 100% of my energy to the guest that I am with in that moment. And so I'll reflect back on some of the former communications we've had, either over email or text, kind of think about how I'm going to help that person explore themselves and achieve whatever it is that they've set out to during our date together. A common misconception is that all sex workers live at the brothels. I actually live about 20-30 minutes away in the South Reno area. So while I'm driving to work, oftentimes I'll kick on a little bit of background music and again put myself through that person's shoes, reflect back on what has led them to this point, what it means to them, and really try to connect as deeply as possible before we meet face to face. We then will go on a little tour of the property. I'll show them some of the different amenities, share with them some of the options we have for our day, and then we'll have a little negotiation conversation. I hate the fact that we call it a negotiation because that feels really pressuresome, when it's just a conversation between 2 people sharing their ideas for how do we want to spend this time together? What do we want to experience? Do we want to stay and focus here, or do we want to go out and have an adventure first? And then go to the office, take care of the experience, book everything through them, and then get to have that moment together for as long as it so may be.
Are you able to share a little bit more about like what the moment may entail?
Oh, of course. Sometimes I'm with someone who's very nervous, a virgin perhaps, who's never so much as even kissed a girl. So what we'll do is we'll design kind of a first date experience where I'll pick out a nice restaurant, we'll go out, get to have this amazing meal, and not only are we talking about them, but we're also talking about how do I go out and have this experience in the real world? What am I supposed to talk about on a first date? Is this the time that we discuss marriage and kids? Or is this the point in which we share our passions and thoughts and kind of set people up for that long-term success too? Other times, it looks like helping people through really deep trauma. Recently, I had the fortune of working with a gentleman who had suffered injuries from war. He lost all feeling down one of his legs. He lost one of his other legs, but like his other leg was lost below the knee. And he was just getting used to the idea of, hey, my whole method of walking, my whole stature is completely changed. How does this affect me as a sexual being? Am I still attractive? What does this mean about my self-worth? And more so than sex, the focus really was on acceptance of the self and the body that you're in. I mean, you are with yourself till the day that you die, and so if you can't love yourself, you're gonna have a really hard time moving forward in life. And so we really dialed in and focused on that. Other times I'm helping people celebrate things, a 50th birthday, a wedding anniversary, and getting to connect with them, or make a fantasy happen, something that they've always seen in their mind's eye. I've always wanted to have two beautiful women curled up on either side of me in bed and get to just have that mental picture to hold on to forever. And I get to help illustrate their mental image and bring it to life in the most beautiful way possible. And it's just every single day is different, and it's so hard to generalize, oh, every day looks like this or that. It very much so is a learning experience, because there's always opportunity for me to grow as a provider as well. I feel like I gain just as much from the experiences as my guests do, because it gives me a deeper understanding and deeper insight into how each different person relates to intimacy, sex, love, touch. What does that mean to someone who's from the Middle East that's never gotten to cuddle before? What does foreplay look like for someone that's a trauma, like that has been through sexual trauma? How do they want to be touched? How do they want to refer to their bodies? Like, what words do you want to use for your genitalia? You've come out as being non-binary. Have you thought about what words are most comfortable for you? And then getting to walk with somebody through that and show them all the different options. Things that I've learned from other people, and just continuing the betterment of society for everyone, really.
Alice, this was so informative for me, and really, I think, for all of my listeners, because what I'm hearing is what you said earlier, that you are just a healer, and I fully believe that if you were to be able to step into more people's lives, there'd be a lot of magic happening, because there seems to me that there's a lot of fear of our body. And
oh yes. That's like such an understatement.
Then tell me more about that statement.
Oh God, people are constantly terrified of their bodies. As a society, we're terrified of aging. We're terrified of gaining weight. We're tired of not being seen in the way that we want to be seen, and our bodies looking like how we want them to, and so we judge ourselves so harshly, and oftentimes that harshness is brought on by fear. It very much so is like a very sharp